Hey everyone, welcome back to Let's Unpack That. I'm Mitchell. Sagar isn't here today. He is traveling in LA for Halloween, but I am still here and I am excited to be joined by Josh Sorbe, who I need to say, legal note, he's here in a personal capacity as a Democratic media strategist, and views expressed are his own. So now we have it out of the way. Josh, welcome to Let's Unpack That.
Thanks. Excited to be here with you, Mitchell.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So, Josh, whenever we have people on for the first time, we love to get to know them a little bit. So, to start, do you want to give us a little bit of a background or story on who you are?
Sure. I'm born and raised in South Dakota. I lived there until I was 23. Moved out to DC in 2020. Did a couple internships beforehand, but moved here in the pandemic. Been here for about 4 years, working in Democratic media for elected officials, as well as some organizations, and I run in my free time. I am training for an Ironman right now, which is really exciting. And yeah, just really passionate about making sure that people are doing good things and people know about it and social media and the way that we communicate with each other.
That's awesome. Yeah, you're crushing it. I feel like you do so much. I've followed you on Twitter, I think, for a few years, and you're always like slaying the corporate life, but then also like having this whole career as like a fitness instructor. I'm like, oh my gosh, how is he doing all of this? Like you're juggling. It's so impressive. But I want to touch briefly on growing up in South Dakota. I love to hear what people's like experiences growing up were. Whereabouts in the state did you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in eastern South Dakota, so right on the border of Minnesota and South Dakota, a town called Brookings. It's a
Okay.
college town, about 15, 20,000 people.
Okay.
I consider it like a small suburb is kind of the culture that it had. The school there, South Dakota State, was a land grant university, so a lot of agriculture, a lot of manufacturing in town. And while I was in school, through high school, I was lucky that I had a pretty good support system. I was an athlete all through middle school and high school, and I went on to compete in swimming in college. I was a debater, involved in other extracurricular activities, and it was interesting because you hear the word South Dakota, and you think a lot of times that that may not be the most conducive for a queer person to grow up in, and I
Hmm.
definitely acknowledge the privileges I had growing up in South Dakota. I was very academic. I was also athletic, and I had a really supportive family, and I have a younger brother who's also queer, and I had a wonderful family, and not everyone's afforded that same opportunity. So it's a mixed feelings on when I reflect back on my upbringing, but
Yeah.
um, I always go back for holidays, and lots of people have conflicting feelings when they go back for holidays, but I always am very grateful that people I have there.
What was it like having a gay brother? Did you know each other were gay, like at a like when you were in high school, or how did that all happen?
We came out around the same time. It was around when I graduated, so 2016,
Is he younger or older
and
than you?
he's younger than I am.
Okay.
So I was 18, he was 16, and we knew about each other. We came out to each other, and our timelines were pretty close to each other. But I mean, it's you can imagine two gay siblings, especially with older brother, like younger sibling dynamics. Like we would be best friends, then at each other's throats like 3 minutes later. And like the older we get, the more that we grow to appreciate it. And our family has been incredibly supportive. And when I left for college right after I came out, and he was still in high school, and that was really like I don't want to speak for him, but I can imagine that would be really difficult for him. And I was able to like, granted, I also went to a state school in South Dakota, so I wasn't like queering it up wherever I went, but like you were able to be a little bit more expressive and invent a new person, like a new persona for yourself when you went to college. And I empathized with him that he wasn't able to do that. And he ended up graduating from the University of Minnesota, and he found his place in Minneapolis. I would go and visit him, and he would be so excited. He found a coffee shop that he worked at. He found an internship that turned into a full-time profession. He still works for that same senator as well because he works in politics additionally. And I can't express how proud I am of him. And since we've come to be mid to late 20s, we found our own niches and our own personalities that we really kind of lean into. And now I think people really see us as two very separate sorts of people. But when you're in a very homogenous setting like South Dakota, it's very easy to kind of compare older sibling to younger sibling, especially when they're so different.
Yeah. It's cool though to be able to, or I can imagine it can be nice to while you're still you're very different, you're able to still be there for each other in those moments that maybe other people couldn't relate to have someone to lean on. That's a it's just a nice resource and, almost a little mini community between the two of you to have.
Totally. It's like a built-in, for me, it's like a built-in coworker. It's also a built-in like best friend, a built-in
Yeah.
family member. Everything is all together. We're completely separate people and we interact differently, but I always know that he's my rock.
So what brought you to DC exactly? Like was it due to your career or what led to that jump?
I'd always been interested in life in DC. I had very few mentors um, living in DC by any means, but I'd always kind of sought out opportunities to go. In high school, I was involved in an organization. It was called FCCLA, uh, somewhat like a nationalized student council, career services, family dynamic sorts of types, and like professional development for high schoolers. And they brought me out to DC a few times. I was pretty involved in them, and I was just fascinated with the city. Very main character energy. You get to see the government buildings up close, and everyone was very young, I noticed, and seemed so professional, and it was very diverse. So I always kind of had that as a site for myself.
Hmm.
And then when I went to college, I studied economics and political science. I was in the business school world as well as the political science world, and I did an internship in Minneapolis actually for a county manager. A great experience, and it got me some Minnesota politics experience. After that, I interned for then Congressman Tim Walz, who's now governor of Minnesota, now future Vice President Tim Walz, which is exciting.
So pretty much
And
you and Tim are best friends,
we're
essentially.
best, total besties.
Yeah.
No, like he like what you see on TV and the stereotypes about him being just like the ultimate Midwestern dad, they're entirely true. And that was my experience with him in the few months that I was able to work for him. And that experience with him was really my first opportunity in DC to be here for a sustained period of time. I met a bunch of friends. I got to work on the Hill, which is where I'm currently employed, and I decided to come back the summer after to work for the senator from Minnesota, Tina Smith, who's wonderful. So I always knew I kind of wanted to come back, but then I graduated college and I had planned to enroll and do education program at Johns Hopkins to do like a 5 year program to do 2 years of a master's in education, then a year of student teaching, year of co-teaching, and be a full-time teacher after that to hopefully do some sort of education policy sphere. I'd volunteered in schools at the college that I in the town that I went to college at, and I always thought that schools were where I wanted to make my impact. I
Hmm.
grew up through schools, growing up as a queer kid. I always found a lot of validation through schools, and it was kind of a safe space for me. So I wanted to be able to give that back to students who may not necessarily have teachers who see that sort of investment in them. And COVID hit, and I got cold feet. I didn't do the program, and I had gotten a competitive scholarship to go to graduate school that I could choose where I went, and I called them and I said, "Hey, like it's the Truman Foundation." I called them and I said, "Hey, like I don't know what I want to do. Like I had this whole plan. Like I'm very type A. I knew I wanted what I wanted, and I like SOS, please help." And they said, "We need a communications and a fundraiser. Come to DC, do the job, and it's the perfect exploratory job." And it was true. I did it for 2 years. I could go forever without asking for a dollar from anybody again. I did not like the fundraising piece was not for me. But I loved the communications piece and getting to do our rollouts of our new scholar announcements every year and do our programming communications and do our digital media really showed me that to be smart at something, you don't have to be an expert in one thing. If you're able to communicate clearly and effectively about a wide array of things, that's a beautiful career to have as well. And that's essentially teaching. So that was how I drew the parallel for myself. And I came back to the Hill, and I've been doing comms and politics since.
So cool. Long story short, I feel like you've been very booked and busy in every stage of your life.
Always, literally, like like ever since I was a kid, like parents would put us in a million activities in one until we found a sport that worked for us, which ended up being swimming. And
Hmm.
like we were always booked and busy, and I feel like I'm going to be booked and busy for the rest of my life. I think a little
I
crazy.
I love it though. I love it though. It's good to stay busy. When you moved to DC, what was the shift like gay community wise?
Very active. It was crazy. Like there were queer people in South Dakota that I was friends with. One of my college roommates was on the swim and dive team, and stereotypically also gay. But I had never had a full queer group of friends
Mm.
before, and in DC, it's the queerest state slash district in America. It's like 15% of the total population identifies as LGBTQ, and the next closest is like 8, 9, maybe 10%. So it's
Okay.
like you walk around and like rainbow flags everywhere. We love it.
Mm-hmm.
On Tuesday, we just had our annual high heel race on 17th Street, the same night as the Kamala Harris rally, and it's a wonderful fundraiser. One of the historical queer neighborhoods put on by the mayor's office, and it baffled me how it was so outwardly present and people so openly identified as LGBTQ when I came to DC. And I told myself that was one of my goals when I moved to DC was to get a group of queer people that I could be authentic with. We could talk about our experiences wherever we came from because no one's from
Mm-hmm.
DC either.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's from across the country and across the world. And I intramural sports are really huge here. So I joined Stonewall Kickball was kind of my first segue into a queer friend group, and some of the friends that I met through kickball were like still some of my really close friends, and like we would do the messy mixers on Fridays, then go out to brunch on Saturdays, and the games on Sundays, and it was an immersive experience, and it really showed me how you can be very authentic and have people close to you that you wouldn't have thought you would have had otherwise.
The tip to move to DC is join the sports teams and you'll find friends.
But don't do it forever because the weekend benders end up it can't the bender has to end at some point.
I love DC though. I've visited there a few times. I have some friends that I studied abroad with there, and whenever I've visited, like it seems like a really nice community. Like all the gay bars and everything are so cool and like just the perfect amount of energy in the air. Definitely an improvement from the Milwaukee gay bar scene for sure.
I can't say I've never been to the Milwaukee gay bar scene, but I love DC. It's like it's a city, but it still feels like a small town a lot of the
Yeah.
times. And I think coming from the Midwest, that made it feel more homey to me, where you can go to one of the establishments and you know a few people that are in there, and that happened very quickly, and
Hmm.
it made me feel like I had acclimated to DC a bit sooner than I thought I would. So as a Midwesterner, we love a small community,
Yeah, for sure.
but not too
It's
small.
not too small. There's like that middle ground of
Yes.
not too big, not too small. Yeah, for because you need to have more than five gay people that you're interested in talking to, right?
Yes.
How would you say DC changes during an election season? Does it feel the same? Is there different energy in the air?
It's pretty intense. I feel like it's pretty emotionally intense right now. But professionally, most of the work's going on the campaign trail.
Mm-hmm.
There are organizations that are based in DC, and my friends that work on campaigns or do some unofficial side work, they're head down until Tuesday or after, whenever results are finalized. But on the official side, as like in Congress, where like it's waiting to see what happens with the election, and I think emotionally people are very invested. It's what everyone's talking about and everyone's thinking about because not only are you thinking about professional situations that might evolve in the future, but also it changes your day to day, whether you're in majority or minority in the House or Senate, or if you're working in an administration that ends up not existing after January and transitioning. It can be stressful for some folks, but for folks who have a bit more stable of a situation, it'll also be really energetic. There's a ton of debate watch parties. I watched
Mm-hmm.
some with I watched the VP debate between Tim Walz and JD Vance with some friends, and then I actually had my birthday party over the summer was on the day of the presidential debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
Oh, what a birthday
Which
party.
what a birthday party! What a day! I actually watched it on mute for a little while, just turn it off, and
Yeah.
like let's just have fun. We'll read the headlines in the morning, and you get some election night gatherings. I'm going off to Montana to help door knock for a Senate candidate out there, and you get like just some fun, quirky Halloween costumes. Like I had a friend
hmm
who was the worm in RFK Jr.'s brain for Halloween, and it's so niche. It's such like what do you mean that you're the worm for RFK Jr.'s brain? But it's hilarious.
That's so fun. I love it. I'm glad the energy and the vibe is still kept positive to a degree and not all doom and gloom or, you know, that would cause too much whiplash. It's good to stay positive, right?
Yeah, and I
And
feel like people in DC have like it's a level head enough that we understand things are going to change. Like that is
yeah.
certain. No matter
Yeah.
what the outcome will be a change from the current status quo. It's just part of living here and deciding to build a career here.
Well, I will say, and we'll get more into politics later, I do feel a good swell of energy in this area. My fingers are crossed. I was feeling really good until the other weekend. I went up to Door County. Have you heard of that area of Wisconsin before?
I've heard of the county, but I'm not familiar
Okay.
where it's at.
So it's kind of by Green Bay. Like if you look at Wisconsin like this is Door County right here. Like Green Bay's here, and this is Door County. And
Okay.
every single, I think like in the last like 6 elections, Door County has voted the way of the winner. So there's a lot of like conversation and focus on getting that county. It's a very like rural area. I kind of call it the Hamptons of Wisconsin because it's cute little like lakeside cities that kind of have an East Coast feel to them a little bit. And no one
Okay.
really lives there. It's a super small population, just lots of tourists. It's beautiful. And a few weekends ago, I went up with some girlfriends and they were having this big Fall Fest celebration. And I was wearing my Harris Walls camo hat. I was like, I'm just wearing this hat. I'm going to get out the vote,
Of
whatever.
course.
I wasn't expecting anything of it, like literally just putting a hat on my head, right?
The hat of the
I,
season, of course.
yes, absolutely. And I get to the festival, and there's probably like 20,000, 30,000 people like on this street. And we're going down, and there's like 500 people with MAGA hats on. And I personally, maybe I'm just in my little bubble in Milwaukee, like I don't really go anywhere else, but there it was it's just a little bit of a whiplash or a little jarring to be like these people like what do you understand like what that means that you have on your head, but then at the same time people would be coming up to me, the most unexpected people, like kind of these like scruffier guys like coming up and shaking my hand and being like you're so brave. I'm like I'm just wearing a hat. um but yeah, my fingers and toes are crossed that Wisconsin goes blue. I'm texting all my friends to be like, girl, are you gonna vote? Because the country's counting on you. My favorite part of these bi-weekly episodes is our hyperfixations. So, Josh, I don't know about you, but I have a new hyperfixation like every other day. I feel like I have something that I'm like obsessed with. And oftentimes I have no one to talk about it with, and it's just in my head. So, this is the safe space to share
Love it.
your niche hyperfixations. I would say, well, I have two. So, I'll share my first one, and then you can share yours, and then I'll share my third and pretend that it's Sagar's hyperfixation.
Okay. Okay.
So, I think my first one, I was trying to think about it today. Um, well, firstly, I kind of mentioned this last week, but spin classes, always love. So good. And during my spin class today, my hyperfixation for the week got reinforced. I don't know if you've been watching Agatha All Along at all on Disney Plus, or if you're into the Marvel shows, but this show is so fun and gay and campy, and there's this song from the show called Down the Witch's Road, which is the song that they sing to like open up the portal to the Witch's Road, and it's been like used throughout the show, and I cannot stop listening to this song. It's like kind of not good, but the more you listen to it, it's just so it's a banger for real. But my spin instructor, I guess she like saw me post that I liked the song on my story, and then she found a remix with it in there, and I was like, okay, like I am winning today. Like this is my moment. My mental health is being cured by the second. Um, but I'm really excited because after we record this, Josh, I will be seated watching the season finale of this show, and my fingers are crossed that
Love
it's
it.
good and gay as the rest of the season has been. But Josh, what is your hyperfixation?
I haven't seen it, but this kind of leads into mine. If there's one thing a spin instructor is gonna do, it's find a remix. And
Oh, absolutely.
I absolutely no like any. I also coach spin in DC. That's like kind
Oh,
of my
fun.
my side hustle. I coach. It's like a you've taken Barry's boot camp before. It's Barry's but with a bike instead of a treadmill.
Okay.
And it's been a fun pastime of mine. I've done fitness for 4 years now. I got my certification after I graduated college and finished swimming. I wanted to do more group fitness, and I enjoyed uh, programming the classes and having a lot of gym friends. And it's like work's kind of go into shit. Like I always have this to kind of fall back on, and
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. It's fun to have different
Mm-hmm.
aspects of your life.
Mm-hmm.
I think my hyperfixation right now. I don't know if your For You page is curated to this. I have gotten so many TikToks of the Sweet and Sour, the Sabrina Carpenter tour. It's
Uh-huh.
wild. Like that is probably half my For You page right now.
Really?
And
Did you go or are you
yes.
going?
No, I'm not going. I have no plans to go. I love Sabrina Carpenter, and it's
Okay.
like it's put me on to her. I don't know if she has like some deal with TikTok to push it to my algorithm, but
Yeah.
I think she is so unabashedly funny, and it's been so long since just had like a quirky white girl just like doing her like cute little bubble pop and having fun
Yeah.
on stage, and she's so cute, and my entire For You page is her right now.
Oh, she's so talented. Like the show looks so good. She's had such a like strong career. She's had like these consistent albums and had her very niche following that would go to her shows, and it feels like she's really worked hard, and the cards just finally fell in a way that was, I mean, she had the Eras tour and then Espresso, and it just like blew up. Like the hard work
Hmm.
pays off, and I am so jealous of everyone attending. So good. It looks
Yeah.
amazing. Then my second hyperfixation, also song related. I don't know if you're familiar with a Twink and a Redhead's like music career.
Heterosexuality drops
Uh,
soon. You have to watch.
oh my gosh, no, heterosexuality it is a bop. Like their whole entire rollout, with all of their songs has been so well done. Like the Panera song, um, what was the one like the Twink and a Redhead song that they did? They've all been just so unserious, but also incredibly executed, like with the photography and the videos and
Yes.
all of that. It's been amazing to watch.
It's well produced, and so I was at the Democratic National Convention in August, and they were there,
Mm-hmm.
and I like some of my friends were texting me and they go, Josh, who's this twink on CNN right now? And I was like, I'm like racking through like the Rolodex of reporters in my head, and I'm like, I don't think any of them like really qualify as a twink in my head, but they were there as like influencer amplifiers that at the convention, and they
Yeah.
interviewed Twink and a Redhead,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
ever
yeah.
since then, it's become like a common refrain in my friend group is Twink and a
Oh,
Redhead.
they're so good.
And then today they were on my For You page today, and they did a promo at Flaming Saddles in New York City, which is so
Like
hilarious.
a
Like I
real
have
one
gone
or
to
a fake one?
like
Was it
they
a
were
real spot?
like
Was it like a
have you heard of Flaming Saddles in New York before? The
yeah,
bar in Hell's Kitchen. It's
yeah.
like they like did like they were there. I don't know if they went during the daytime or when they went. They were on the counter where all of the performers dance at Flaming Saddles, like performing heterosexuality with like employees in the background just watching Grant and Ash sing this like terribly camp song. You have to watch it.
Okay.
It's so good. And it threw me back to like that's like one of the things I've loved about DC that I didn't think I ever would. I go up to New York probably every 4 or 5 months or so and have just like a ball up there. And Flaming Saddles was one of the first bars I went to as a South Dakotan. I was like, oh, there's a country gay bar in New York City. Like, absolutely, I have to go.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I scrolled on the For You page. I saw like maybe 0.2 seconds of that TikTok, and I clocked it, knew exactly where they're at, and I knew that I would love this content.
I think they're targeting you, Josh.
Yeah, the algorithm, I'm telling you, the algorithm, Mitchell, it's out to get me.
I cannot believe how much has changed since July and how many story arcs we have lived since then. It has been a roller coaster. How are you feeling today, Josh? How are you doing about it all?
I feel confident. Like I do. And I'm a team player, and I think Kamala Harris is a great candidate. And she is articulate and smart and funny and joyful and inspiring. And I think as we've seen, the more and more that people get to know her and know about her, the more they like her. So the fact that you have that raw and talented of a candidate that people are still learning about will mean that when, not if, when she's elected next week, she will
Hmm.
become an even more effective president because as people learn about her, they truly will get to respect and enjoy and have her as our first female president.
Absolutely. I voted for her last week on the first day of early voting in Wisconsin. And during the last presidential election, I did it absentee. I mean, it was COVID, so it was harder to do an in person or, risky, you could say, whatever. But getting to be in that, ballot box and like vote for potentially the first female president is just so cool. I know she hasn't made that a part of her campaign intentionally, but it's just cool to potentially be a part of history.
Yeah, I'm looking at I got my absentee ballot on my desk right now, and I'm planning on dropping it off tomorrow before I go out to do some get out the vote stuff on Friday.
Do they
But I
give you a
feel good.
sticker? Do you have a sticker
Yes,
still? Okay.
yes, we got a sticker.
That's what matters. That's what matters, the sticker. What was the temperature or the vibe like in DC when she was made the candidate? Or when the switch
It
was
was
made?
it was a crazy few weeks. I mentioned earlier, my birthday it still is. My birthday is June 27th, which was the day of the Biden Trump debate. And from that day to 3 weeks was a play by play, refreshing Twitter, reading all the newsletters that come out in the morning, seeing what the tally of the lawmakers were coming out saying that Biden should step aside versus what people were standing up in defense. And it was a whirlwind to follow. And
Mm-hmm.
I was actually at the pool. It was a Sunday. I remember when Joe Biden decided to step aside, and Kamala Harris later was endorsed by Joe Biden to take the mantle, and it was enthralling, and people didn't know what would happen, but it shows just how much politics really is people based. And
Mm-hmm.
you had a current president and a former candidate for president this election who did one of the most selfless acts and realized that maybe she was better suited to run this cycle, or maybe people had lost trust in him. And it is so difficult to release power when you've acquired it. And this is a talented man who did incredible work in the 4 years as our president, looking at the biggest climate change law. He signed marriage equality into law. He
One of the first
um,
supporters of it too.
Absolutely, and that caused him some issues when he was one of the first supporters of it, and like he is the kindest person who has been through grief, and his family's been through grief the last few years, and uh, when he decided to step aside, it truly, I think, aged well with him. It showed how much we respected him, and Kamala Harris has run a flawless campaign in the short time that she's been at the top of the ticket.
Yeah. Whenever I see like videos or interviews with Joe, it's so clearly how empathetic and kind and caring, and even now, like since he is no longer the candidate, it feels like there's like a weight lifted off his shoulders, and like he is so energized and working so hard for people. I really hope that his legacy is looked back in a positive light, no matter how things go. I hope he's remembered for his sacrifice and for the public leader and servant that he's been for decades. It's
I hope so. And I
incredible.
mean, like his legacy is Kamala Harris. And if she wins next week, that will cement him as an incredibly effective president who took us out of, like, I feel like people have amnesia. Like, COVID was a terrible time. And when in the 4 years of the Trump administration, we would wake up and refresh social media and see some outlandish thing that he was doing, and it was chaotic. And
Hmm.
the fact that he was able to pull us out of the Trump years and pull us out of the COVID pandemic, and he still remains, as of now, until hopefully next week, the only person who's ever beaten Donald Trump in a presidential election. And
Hmm.
I hope when she wins next week that we can celebrate his accomplishments and also give him the credit that I think he deserves.
And to your point, like the Harris campaign, it really has been so impressive to watch how they did that transition, how they've been hitting all these battlegrounds, learning from past missteps, potentially from other cycles, and really driving home this like disciplined message. I loved that clip. I forget what interview I think it was from Charlemagne on the
It was a
Breakfast Club where
Charlemagne.
yeah, where
Hmm.
he asked her why she always says these same things, and it's she said it's called discipline, and that's truly reflected in how she's been able to drive this message home. And one thing that does confuse me a little bit is people always say that they don't know enough about her. But my question is, are you listening? Are you hearing what she's been saying all these months? I've talked to some people in my life who are on the less engaged side and maybe a little bit more politically conservative. And I think there's been a lot of people who are more plugged into like the memes they see of her laughing, and they aren't exposed to her other messages. But my fingers and toes are crossed that the gays and the girls can carry this one across the finish line. Very hopeful as well that it will be a good week next week, hopefully.
Yes, I hope so. We could talk more about the media environment and why people are getting messages and they're not gonna like. I will geek out on
No,
that with you because
please,
I have
please.
many thoughts there.
No, let's get into it. I'm a journalism major myself, Josh, so I love media and like how it all works. So I am down to dive in. Um, do you want to start if you have a thought that you want to jump off on?
I mean, like the media environment right now, it's disheveled, and people acquire their information from so many different sources, and many aren't even sources. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's tragic, and we can agree that it's tragic that traditional media is falling and it's in a decline right now, and people are not trustful of traditional media sources, which is unfortunate because they have gone through the education process like yourself on how to be an ethical journalist and what's true versus not true and when to lean in and when to pull away and how to like give proper attribution. And it's really frustrating as a democracy that we see trust in journalism decline, and we see local journalism especially taking hits lately. And
Mm-hmm.
from like as someone who's never studied journalism, has like love what journalists do, could never be a journalist myself. Uh, Working with journalists and this media environment, it's also difficult because that means that you have to call out when you disagree on principle that the journalism industry is struggling right now. But you also have to play the game a little bit. Like you have to do the rapid response clips. And quite frankly, I tell coworkers that shit posting works. And that's the tagline that they remember. And with social media companies at the whim of billionaire folks like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, and it changes all the time. But when it's something as important as what people perceive as true versus not true, you can't say that local journalism or journalism generally needs to be the source of information, so we're not going to engage with all of the other ways that people engage to that people retrieve information, because
Mm-hmm.
that allows bad actors to fill that space and win and flood the market with awful information. So there was this discourse in the campaign a few weeks ago. Kamala Harris was booking interviews with podcasters like Charlemagne the God. She went on Call Her Daddy with Alex
Mm-hmm.
Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of journalists were frustrated because they felt like they weren't giving traditional
Well,
journalism
they spent weeks,
enough.
the media spent weeks on this narrative of she won't interview with us.
And from a flacking or a PR perspective, like yeah, like I'm sorry, but the business model of deciding to go on a standalone interview that's really, really difficult and takes a lot of prep that doesn't reach as many people isn't as time conducive as it used to be. Now you still have to do it, and it's important to keep those relationships fresh because they're very well trusted and they're sourced and they're good fact checkers sometimes. They're fact checkers, but at the same time, her goal is to reach people, and especially on this expedited timeline, to reach voters quickly and educate them on who she is. Yes, Alex Cooper has the most popular podcast among women in the world. She's going to sit down and talk to Alex Cooper about reproductive rights because people listen and trust Alex Cooper.
And
And
that
same with
was one
Charlemagne.
of the most substantial interviews to date, even now, that I've seen the entire campaign cycle. I think traditional media, they're put in a tricky situation because they
Hmm.
feel like, they have to stay non-biased, or at least present themselves in a non-biased way. And so often that means asking her about the five latest insults that Donald has lobbed her way, or X, Y, and Z, and it misses on some of that authenticity and conversational factor that I think these podcasts like Call Her Daddy, and that younger voters specifically really crave when it comes to media, because all of it can become so exhausting to follow and to hear all the doom and gloom and what the latest thing Donald is yelling and screaming about. So I think
Hmm.
the podcast strategy and all of that has been incredible on the Harris team side of
It's
things.
genius. And like especially the way that people retrieve information, they want to retrieve information from a place that's perceived as friendly. So
Hmm.
like when she sat down with Brett Baer on Fox News, I thought that was an incredible interview.
Oh yeah.
It was a difficult interview. But if she's not willing to sit and have conversations, kind of like we talked about earlier, with people who might be perceived as different or perceived as in conflict, you're leaving that space open for others to fill for you. And
Hmm.
whether it be deciding to go really robust online, which the Kamala Harris campaign has done really well at, or it be going robust with traditional media, which I think that they're doing their due diligence with, or engaging in these more alternative sorts of media. It's an all strategy, and that's the only way to get your message across in this media environment is to do all of it. And it's difficult, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of hard staff work, but you can't leave any stone unturned.
Yeah, and it feels, given again this very short campaign that they've ran, like they weren't going to do interviews right away because they had to think about, okay, what's our policy even going to be? Like, we think someone's going to just snap their fingers and they have it all put together. I what they've been doing, especially in this last month or so, has truly been amazing. On Trump's strategy, his interview strategy has been a lot of those white male podcasts, which I don't know if you've seen clips of those, but something else is going on over there. That man is unwell,
Unwell, unserious, all the things.
unhinged. Yeah.
But it plays into his messaging, and
Mm-hmm.
like I'm not gonna get like I think his campaign is very disciplined, and I think they have strategy. I don't think he is. And sometimes you see some of this decision they make, like to go on Joe Rogan. Like it makes sense. Like those are people who naturally have somewhat of an affinity to distrust government entities and other things.
From a strategic perspective, maybe that made sense, like logically, but I don't know if what he said on there like got him any new voters.
No, and that's the hard part that, and it's been very publicly reported that that's the internal conflict they have is the team makes decisions that are in the best interest of the campaign. They encourage him to talk about the economy. They encourage him to talk about immigration and stay on the issues, but you have a principal who doesn't want to talk about those things. He wants to talk about personal vengeance and he wants to talk about like anything else under the sun that's not a disciplined message like we see Kamala Harris's
Mm-hmm.
campaign having. So it's difficult when the campaign seems to be positioning him to do good things, but it's very clear that you have a principal who is not interested in that, quite frankly.
Yeah, and especially when he's been when there's been some fire under him or the polls get tighter or there's high pressure, he doesn't feel like he's winning. It seems that that's when he's been the most astray from what they'd like him to say. He just goes with his gut and thinks that that's going to get him the win when we'll see. Speaking of his team and their strategy, they wanted to have this big homecoming for Trump back to New York earlier. When was that this week? That was last weekend on Sunday. Yes.
Hmm.
Okay. On last Sunday, where they booked Madison Square Garden to have him have a rally, and they opted to have a lot of people speak at this event. You look at the list, and it's like all of the crazy MAGA people just back to back. But some of the things these people were saying were a little wild. I think we have the clip if we wanna watch.
Sure.
And these Latinos, they love making babies too. Just know that. They do. They do. There's no pulling out. They don't do that. They come inside, just like they did to our country. There's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. All right. Heck yeah. It's a cool black guy with a thing on his head. What the hell is that? A lampshade? Look at this guy. Oh my goodness. Wow. I'm just kidding. That's one of my buddies. He had a Halloween party last night. We had fun. We carved watermelons together. It was awesome.
As the first Samoan Malaysian low IQ former California prosecutor ever to be elected president, it was just a groundswell of popular support.
She is the devil, whoever screamed that out. She is the Antichrist.
She is some sick bastard, that Hillary Clinton, huh? What a sick son of a bitch. The whole fucking party, a bunch of degenerates, lowlives, Jew haters, and lowlives. Every one of them.
The goal of this last week of a campaign, of any campaign, is to deliver your closing argument. You've put in a ton of work over the past, like in Kamala Harris instance, months, or when she was still on the ticket, years. For Donald Trump, he's been knowing he's doing this for years. It's your chance to give your final closing argument clearly and concisely to rally your base, to get them to vote, and to convince undecided voters. And Donald Trump definitely didn't convince any undecided voters with that last rally. And maybe he turned out his base. I don't know. But you have this uninteresting long rally. It was, I heard, saw reports it was like 9, 10 hours long from start to finish. That's boring. That's long.
And they're just
It
speaking too. Like there's not even anything entertaining about it. A comedian
no.
who's not
And
funny.
no, and it's ironic because like it's so unserious also because like that section of the program was called the hype acts, was what they deemed like the comedian section was the hype acts. Like first of all, no hype. Like that did not like hype people up. And like Tony Hinchcliffe just going up there and like saying bad jokes, like not funny jokes. Like, it doesn't accomplish the mission to get people to go out and vote and get people to actually trust Donald Trump and trust what his administration would do. And the irony is, there were reports that showed that in part of that section, there were jokes that like explicitly called Kamala Harris the C word, but that was revised out
And
by the
not in a good
campaign.
context. Not in the good way.
No, 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 not at all. People are reclaiming that word, but that is not the context that they would have
No.
used it.
No.
But the campaign revised that out, but left the rest of this in. Like that is a tacit endorsement of the words that were being said on this stage. Like they'll come out and say like it was improv, like this wasn't part of the solution to like, try to distance them from him. But it's the sentiment that matters. And when you have this unhinged of a person who focuses on himself, that entire rally, like the fact it's in New York City just because he has a personal vendetta against New York City and he feels like this city that he helped to build is out to get. Like it's all about him and it's not
Mm-hmm.
about the suburban person in Pennsylvania. It's not about the rural farmer in Wisconsin. It's not about the person that was devastated by Hurricane Helene in North Carolina. It's entirely focused on him and not on people who actually matter. And he just doubled
Mm-hmm.
down on this message of vengeance, and it was odd. It was weird to watch.
Yeah, and going after these communities that make up a sizable population of the swing states that you need to win. States that have been tens of thousands of votes between the winner in the past election. Like, he's not in a position where he can afford to lose voters. If his mission is to win, why would you be alienating people a week before? It doesn't make sense.
Not at all, especially when so much of this last week is ground game and volunteers and staffers helping get people registered to vote if the deadline hasn't passed and making sure that people have voting plans and whatnot. And the Harris campaign has an incredible ground game of volunteers and staffers and field offices. And the Trump campaign is trying this new and bold idea from Elon Musk's future government efficiency playbook where they outsource it all to a super PAC and they're just hopefully relying on volunteers to get everything out. And it's this odd like consultant bro formula to run a ground game for a campaign that you're trying to win. Like that's not serious.
They have concepts of a ground game.
Concepts of a ground game. Concepts.
Yeah, I don't know if you listen to the New York Times podcast, The Daily, but I love to listen to it every day when I'm getting ready for work. And they had an episode maybe a week or so ago about, maybe even a few days ago, about like the field offices in Arizona, I think, and what their priorities were. Half of it was knocking on doors, and the other half was like working on the security of the election and training random people on ballot security and to get people to mail in their vote or to vote on election day and confusing them on all these different methods they can vote. And it just feels like a big suck of money and not a lot of results.
Yes, and it like as a Dem strategist, it makes me think like why do people still resonate with this message when I see it as a dumpster fire? Like he's still like it's still a neck and neck race. It's going to go to final tabulations, and it's people feel disgruntled and they
Yeah.
feel unseen and they feel unheard, and that's where I think you have to take people at their word. And when they say that, no matter what what your guidance is or the talking points that you have to hear them and acknowledge it. And sometimes people are
Hmm.
very averse to do that because they get defensive and they say, "Oh, well, you think the economy's bad right now? Back under Donald Trump, like let's talk about how he led us into a pandemic," which like is correct, but that doesn't mean that they don't feel that way right now. So you have to assuage the concerns and then deliver the message that your candidate, in this instance, Kamala Harris, has to fix that remedy. I think she did a really good job of that earlier this week, too.
Yeah. And just the thought of someone like knocking on my door and trying to get me to vote for Trump, I don't feel like it'd be a very kind interaction on their part. Like their energy is never kind. So I kind of said this earlier, but I have a gut instinct that it is not nearly as tight as what people like to think it is. But I don't want to jinx anything, so we'll see what happens on Tuesday.
I'd love for that to be right.
My dream, like my fantasy world, is that like on election night it is looking way more blue because usually election night it looks more red, and then the early votes come in and suddenly it switches. That's what happened last year when we were dumping ballots, according to that man. But hope we'll stay hopeful. We'll stay hopeful. Okay, do we want to talk about Kamala? You kind of teed it up here a little bit,
Yeah,
but
let's do
last
it.
night she had her closing speech on the ellipse, and it was a great 30-minute speech. Highly recommend everyone listening, if you haven't seen it, to just watch it yourself. It's so well done. but I wanted to play a few minutes from the end of her speech that I thought was powerful. So let's take a look here.
Nearly 250 years ago, America was born when we wrested freedom from a petty tyrant. Across the generations, Americans have preserved that freedom, expanded it, and in so doing, proved to the world that a government of, by, and for the people is strong and can endure. And those who came before us, the patriots at Normandy and Selma, Seneca Falls and Stonewall, on farmlands and factory floors, they did not struggle, sacrifice, and lay down their lives only to see us cede our fundamental freedoms. They didn't do that only to see us submit to the will of another petty tyrant. These United States of America, we are not a vessel for the schemes of wannabe dictators. The United States of America is the greatest idea humanity ever devised. A nation big enough to encompass all our dreams, strong enough to withstand any fracture or fissure between us, and fearless enough to imagine a future of possibilities. So America, let us reach for that future.
You were there, Josh. What was it like for you?
Incredible. I'll remember the night forever. I was with my younger brother and two of my close friends and 75,000 of my new besties that went to town to listen to her. And it was just one of those moments in history that you'll never forget. And I think that, especially that clip that you showed, it was the perfect two-prong approach where at the beginning of the speech, she talks about Donald Trump openly, and she talks about how he's unserious and he's unhinged. And while he might not be a serious person, the consequences of what he would do is very serious. He would defund the Department of Education, and he would enact a national abortion ban and all the other awful things that are in Project 2025. But let's put this within the context, existing within the context. We love to, we're coconut pilled. We love to do that. About what this election means. She took it all the way back to very significant historical events. She mentioned Stonewall, which, for a leading presidential candidate to name drop Stonewall in her closing argument is incredible and a great encapsulation of the progress that the queer movement's made. But then after that clip, for the rest of her speech, she painted a future of what she could do and for policy proposals that people can buy into.
Yeah, I honestly, when it got to that part, I started tear up watching. I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually someone who cares about these people and lifting people up. And yes, someone could argue that it's performative, but based on her history as throughout her career and as a politician, it seems like these are things that truly are her values and causes that she does have passion for and genuinely wants to help these communities. And to your point, it's really hard to not draw the stark contrast that this message is from what's coming from the Trump campaign.
And she's so disciplined. What she says, she means, because she's thought about it. She articulates it very well. And even in the speech, she was very decisive. She said, look, a lot of you are still getting to know me, and this campaign's been crazy. And she acknowledged that during the speech. And she said that no matter what, he who shall not be named, when people disagree with him, he wants to use the full force of the American military against them. That is not what we do with American citizens. Instead, she says, I will listen and I will speak truthfully, even if I don't disagree with you, and you will have a seat at my table. That is a stark contrast. So she was very decisive and even admitted, people might still be getting to know her, but she spoke from the heart, and I found it very powerful.
Yeah. I generally feel that the folks that both campaigns are trying to reach, that very small group of undecided voters, if any one of them were to watch that speech, I don't know how someone can't see a presidential figure.
She
I
had
could,
a before she came out around like 7:30, 7:45 or some point.
yeah,
There was a slew of like 10 speakers earlier in the night that hit on all of the like surrogates who were hitting on all the different topics that the campaign's closing in on. There was a couple who suffered a miscarriage amid the Texas abortion ban who spoke, and there was someone who started a small business. There was someone who lost a family member who was a police officer in the January 6th insurrection, and one of the speakers was this couple, and they were both former Trump voters, man and a woman. Woman voted for him in 2016, didn't vote for him in 2020. The man voted for 2016 and 2020, but they both said they're voting for Kamala Harris. And it was so clear that she is targeting the undecided voters. Because, like I said, this closing argument week, it's about turning out the base, which Kamala Harris has, like, we're all coconut pilled, we're excited. But she is also talking directly to the undecided voters who may not know her entirely. And like we talked about earlier, might feel a little disheveled about the state of the world right now, but she's leaning into them to trust her. And I don't see that same discipline on the other campaign.
yeah. And at this point, I mean, when we're recording this, there's just about 5, 6 days left until election day, and it's a battle to get those headlines. And when your messaging's a mess, you keep try again. Donald tried to have a press conference yesterday, which I didn't see anything from that. I don't know what came from it. He probably just babbled on as he does. But before Kamala's speech last night, Joe was on some virtual rally and was talking about the comments made at Madison Square Garden. Had a little slip up. I'm sure everyone is aware, maybe, but we don't need to play the clip. But seems that it was a slip up, a misspeak, and the White House press team has cleaned it up. Joe's walked it back on his Twitter, but the Trump campaign is doing anything they can to try to get his base to be excited and to come back to him. Maybe those folks who have walked away after those jokes at the rally. But he's in Green Bay, and you sent me this, Josh, right before we hopped on. But he's in Green Bay, Wisconsin, in a garbage truck with his campaign logo on it. In a construction uniform too, which confuses me. The whole thing is really strange.
I have so many thoughts about this, and the first one is Donald Trump wants to run against Joe Biden so badly. And ever since Joe Biden dropped out of the race and passed the torch to Kamala Harris, he refuses to concede that he's running against an intelligent woman. And he name calls her, and in private he calls her horrible names, but he wants to run against Joe Biden, and he's pissed he's not. And when that disputed comment happened the other night, it very clearly stoked that feeling in him. And the idea of him leaning into, like, it also ties into that McDonald's stunt he did a week and a half-ish ago.
Yeah.
Like he has no respect for people who are actually working class, and he's mocking them. Like he thinks it's a joke to be a sanitation worker, or he thinks it's a joke to be a McDonald's employee. And if he truly cared about working class people and building a lower class and a middle class to provide an opportunity economy, he would support a minimum wage increase. He would support childcare. He would support paid family leave, and he would support economic policies that actually help people. And instead, he goes to some crappy logo printer, because clearly they didn't they didn't make that a transparent logo, because I see the white behind it. But they go and print it on the side of a garbage truck, and it's just a stunt, and it baits people.
What does this say? From like a communications perspective, it doesn't feel like it's. I mean, I guess it's owning that they're trash or that they're garbage, but it's
It's
like
owning the libs. They're trying
I
to own the
guess,
libs here,
but
is what they're doing. But at face value, he printed his logo on the side of a garbage truck. Like that, like it shows his campaign is garbage.
yeah, it doesn't give the as clean of a message as it feels like they want to. Like
No.
if someone calls your supporters garbage, which I just want to say to Kamala's point, people aren't any different based on who they vote for. It's their vote, it's their right. But if someone's calling you garbage, what makes you be like, I should put on this orange vest like I'm on a construction site, and I should drive this half-assed garbage truck around Green Bay, Wisconsin. It makes you look like a joke. It
And
really
put
does.
my logo on the side like that. Like if this was an elaborate scheme, which I don't believe it is, they would have printed the quote verbatim or had a virtual billboard or something in the area, or had one of those, like those billboard trucks drive by, play the clip over and over and over, because people don't know what they're talking about because they're in these weird conservative media spheres that talk about like strange ideas of manhood, and they get super defensive and they don't believe in cancel culture, but then the second that something is said that offends them, they go out and cancel people. And it's this weird fear of talking heads that are completely disconnected from reality and will not talk to undecided voters.
Yeah. And if you're doing stunts like this and going to McDonald's, how seriously are you one taking your supporters and the voters that you're trying to reach?
They're mocking them. It's
Yeah.
mockery.
Yeah. That was a great point that you made earlier. It's so true. So true. They are not trying to earn them with policy or promises or whatever. It's just, look at me, I'm so relatable. I drive a garbage truck and I work the drive-thru of a McDonald's.
It's nothing more than a Halloween costume.
Yeah, maybe he was in the mood. He was sad he was missing out this year.
Aye, aye, aye.
I did want to talk about briefly here celebrity endorsements because it has been a continued topic throughout the election. Do you think these endorsements matter, or are they just reinforcing what people already believe?
I do think they matter. And I think especially from a media perspective, it matters. We talk about the way that people retrieve information, and it's less and less from official sources and less through vetted sources and more through people who they trust and who they enjoy. And I don't know if it matters down to the numbers. I am not on the polar coaster. I do not watch political polls. I'd rather invest my time in other things. But when you have Taylor Swift endorsing a candidate and it drives voter registration up by hundreds of thousands of votes at vote.gov, like that makes a difference. And when you have a D-list comedian make a crappy joke at Madison Square Garden and you automatically get some very influential and trusted Puerto Rican Americans endorsements, it shows that you have credence to your message. And when you are a campaign or an idea or an apparatus of policies trying to reach other voter, you want to find the middle people that can help you bridge it, and celebrity endorsements do. They do help do that. Now, I don't like everything's a zero-sum game, and time that's spent courting an endorsement isn't time that's fundraising or doing a rally or something like that. And I don't know how much political candidates need to seek them out per se, but I do think they matter, and I think it helps fuel media, like favorable media narratives that will reach people that are kind of harder to reach and aren't plugged into the day-to-day of politics.
Well, okay, the election is, when you guys are listening to this, 4 days away. If you're not registered to vote yet, please begging, you to go to iwillvote.com and find your local polling place, check your registration, see if you can register in person. I think most states you can, but check the rules, figure out what you can do, and make your voice heard. It's so important. Josh, with just a few days away, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't want to count chickens before I hatch, but I feel good, and you see them investing in every battleground state, and a lot of times at this point in a campaign, the path to victory starts narrowing, and you realize that they're not scheduling rallies in certain states or they pull ads from other ones. The Harris campaign's not doing that, and it's all gas, no brakes to the election. I think especially for this audience, one thing that's important to remember is on queer issues, the choice is very, very stark. Like we have records to look at. In the Trump administration, carved out sexual orientation as like from employment anti-discrimination laws in the Civil Rights Act. They said that employers are able to discriminate based on sexual orientation and gender identity. They banned trans people from serving in the military, and they're hell-bent on vilifying queer and trans children with the full power of the federal government. Like, that is one choice for LGBTQ people. And the other one is Kamala Harris' track record, where the Biden-Harris administrations codified same-sex marriage, and they declared MPOX a national emergency. I can't think that Donald Trump's CDC would have done the same and gotten vaccines out as quickly as they did. And I like, that affected me personally. I contracted monkeypox in the summer of 2022, and it was an absolute nightmare to get care. And then the second that the medication became more available and I got it, I was cured in a couple days. And that's the power that government can have, especially when it comes to queer people. And it leans back on some of the darkest days of queer liberation when it comes to the HIV/AIDS crisis. And you need to have leaders that defend you, and it's proven that Kamala Harris would be that person. So I don't know, get out there, tell friends to vote, go to iwillvote.com, and if you have friends in battleground states, especially reach out. Some texts can help, and sometimes giving people the benefit of the doubt, hearing them out, and just trying to have a kind conversation can go a long ways.
Yeah, the choice is so clear for gay people. And if you're listening to this and maybe you have people in your family who are on the fence, just give them a call, have a conversation, almost be like you're a door knocker and you're trying to sway someone or just educate them on what's at stake. And even on the topics like economy and immigration, like, it's not as strong as a case as Donald will make these people want to think. Like, I think even today there was a hot mic with Elon Musk saying that if Trump's economic plan with all these tariffs go into effect, that it would be a period of pain and suffrage for the middle class, which, one, bold thing to admit on the record, but is that really what you want for your peers, your community, your fellow Americans? I know I'm speaking to the choir listening to this. I don't think there's any Trump supporters listening to this podcast, but just, I know it's hard and I know it feels debilitating at times, but having the conversation can go a long way. And there's only a few days left, and then it's done. Hopefully it's not too long of a process after Tuesday. Fingers crossed.
Right? You don't want to look back and think you could have done anything more.
Yeah.
That's how I think about it.
Yeah. All gas, no brakes.
Period.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I appreciate it. You're always welcome back. Do you want to give everyone your socials so they can find you and keep up with everything you're doing?
Yeah, it's at Josh Sorbe, all socials. Hit me up, let's chat, and go Kamala.
Yes, absolutely. And next time I'm in DC, Josh, I will be taking one of your spin classes. I need to get the full experience.
Absolutely. And we'll go to the short and sweet tour. We'll go to Shawn Mendes. And
I can't wait.
World Pride next summer in DC.
Oh, yes,
Come hang out.
Yes, I should. Okay. Well, thank you, Josh. Talk to you later.
Yeah.
Bye.